All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So we're just going to give it a few more minutes as everyone's joining. You can see the agenda here to see what we have planned today, but we will start in about a minute or so just to give everyone some time to get in. All right, again, for those who are just joining us, we're going to give it about another 30 seconds, less than a minute, just to let everyone join us and get set up. Before we begin, you can see the agenda just to see what we're going to do today. So we're going to give it a few more seconds. All right, I think we are good to go. So I will let the chair, Adam Bargteal, continue.
Okay, so first, I want to welcome you all to our volunteer recruiting event, and I want to thank you for coming. I am currently the ACM SIGGRAPH chair and the keeper of Tuffy. Many of you haven't seen Tuffy, but Tuffy is passed down from president to president, and now me as the chair. I was going to share a little bit about how I got here. I had participated in various program committees, and I even co-chaired a conference. And then a friend of mine suggested that I run for the executive committee. I really had no idea what I was signing up for. Within months of joining the executive committee, I was creating new programs and new publications even. And 4 years later, I found myself serving as chair. It was like going from 0 to 10,000 in 4 years, which I guess that's fine. For more on why I serve, you can read my essay that's on the chair's corner. It's been well received. I don't like to brag. The short version is that it's not entirely altruistic. It's more of a symbiotic relationship. And there are plenty of personal benefits that I get from my service to SIGGRAPH. I hope you do choose to volunteer for SIGGRAPH. There are lots of big jobs and lots of little jobs, and everyone can contribute, no matter what your skills, your time, your interest. Now more than ever, we are refreshing, revising, and renewing our organization, and we really do need your help. Finally, I'll note that we are recording this event, and the first part is going to be sort of a broadcast. We will have time for questions at the end, and you should feel free to ask questions at any time throughout the Q&A interface. But the questions will be moderated at the end. And I think with that, I can turn it over to Rebecca.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rebecca Strelik. I'm here representing SIGGRAPH's nominations committee, and I'm not going to read slides to you. I'm an educator and a professor of visual arts, and one of my pet peeves is reading a bunch of text, so I'll let you do that if I get boring. But the gist of what I do is I help SIGGRAPH find key volunteers, key leaders, really. And I work with a committee of people, and we vet applications, we conduct interviews, and then we make recommendations to the executive committee, or the EC for short. And then the EC selects those people and puts them into roles so that they can serve in the same way that Adam just described. And what Adam just described is a common story, I think, in SIGGRAPH. Maybe you're here today because you've been to one of our conferences. Maybe you're here because one of your professors recommended that you attend. Hi, Gabe. Maybe you're here for a variety of reasons. You just kind of stumbled upon us, and we're glad that you are. Because I think what I do pretty well is that I represent someone who's not even supposed to be here, right? So if you've been to SIGGRAPH, you know kind of a majority of what we do is based in computer science, animation, visualization. It's in our name, right? Special interest group on computer graphics and interactive techniques. That's who we are. I'm a visual artist, right? I use computer aided design, 3D modeling and printing, 3D scanning to make wearable objects, jewelry, decoration for the body. And the reason I'm here is because in 2003, that work was accepted into SIGGRAPH North American's Conference Art Gallery. And Penn State, my university, paid for me to attend to see my work in the gallery. And I was hooked. And I did something similar to what Adam did on a slightly different trajectory, but I was a contributor. I contributed my artwork to be shown in that gallery, which was awesome. And then I did it the next year because I had to, I was compelled. And then I spent a lot of time in SIGGRAPH Studio, which is a venue where a lot of makers get together to make more things, more interesting collaborations using technology. And then I was on that subcommittee. And I think, right, if we could graph volunteerism at SIGGRAPH, I think that's what happens. It kind of starts out as a little kernel about this big. And it's almost like rolling a ball of snow, right, in your backyard to make that bottom sphere of the snow person. And you're rolling it, and it's gathering all these things. And sometimes it picks up stuff it's not supposed to, leaves, twigs, your kid's mitten, and it rolls it along, right? And it supports all these really interesting, beautiful ideas. And so that was me. I wasn't even supposed to be here. I am not a computer scientist. I'm an artist through and through. I have an MFA. And I got hooked. And I got hooked so much that I wanted to be part of the thing, not just giving, but supporting that bottom sphere. I wanted to be part of the thing that made us all stronger. And so that's why I volunteered. And I think the position I've landed in now kind of bookends that entire experience, because I was on a subcommittee, which is the people behind the scenes running all of the venues at the conference. They work for years, sometimes months, sometimes days to contribute. And in those cases, then you show up as an attendee or a contributor and you get to experience this thing that they've worked so hard on. It's pretty magical. And from there, I was chair of the SIGGRAPH Studio in 2007. And then I became a new position that actually no longer exists, which is kind of the beauty of SIGGRAPH, right? As we evolve and change. I was the SIGGRAPH art director for a couple of years. And then I was the SIGGRAPH conference chair. And this photo that's on my slide is from that moment, that welcome event where there was like 4,800 people sitting in a big room listening to me, an artist living and working in central Pennsylvania. And they're from all over the world. And we're all linked by kind of a singular idea of working through computing, around computing, breaking computing. We're all doing that in some way or another. And in this moment that was captured in this photo is me asking people to identify themselves as how they're connected to SIGGRAPH. And I ask people to raise their hands if they've contributed to SIGGRAPH, if they're volunteering for SIGGRAPH. And when I ask these series of questions, and maybe some of you were there and can remember this moment, I can't define how proud I was to see all of these hands raised. A majority of that number of people were raising their hands because in some part, no matter how big or small, they contributed to this thing that is so important to all of us. And I think at this time where we've been pretty different for over a year as a world, now's the time that you've kind of shed some of those things that aren't important to you, the things that don't count as much maybe, and maybe you've got some room. Maybe it's just this much, maybe it's a lot. And now's the time that we need you too, because we've shed some things and we're ready to turn into something new as well. So with that being said, what I wanted to do is talk a little bit about your leadership, SIGGRAPH itself. Jenna, could you please advance the slide? This is your executive committee, your EC. And these individuals are elected or appointed. They're all voting members of the EC. And one of the things I like to do is nominations committee chairs is take credit for all of them. No, just kidding. Just a little bit of credit, because myself and the committee that I work with were able to find these people for the most part and urge them and encourage them to run for an election, which is a scary thing. Elections are scary, but it's a huge amount of service that you can literally moment by moment give back to this organization. These are the people who are making those decisions on where SIGGRAPH is going to be in 5, 10, 15 years, approving things like what cities we land in, approving conference chairs, all kinds of things to help us in our strategic initiative and direction. And what I want you to know about them, and I'll save you some time because I Googled them and I looked some things up. I wanted you to get a sense that, like me, maybe some of these people aren't supposed to be here. It's like Sesame Street. One of these things is not like the other. And that's the point, right? We really want a group of people that not only represent who we think we are right now, but who we want to be later. So we're often looking for people that are not like ourselves, not just for diversity's sake only, but to really get all the voices, as many as the voices as we can as we're making decisions on your behalf. And that's what we're doing. And so what's important to note here is we do have a lot of educators. We have a lot of people from academia. And so I have my cheat sheet here, which I think is important. A large majority of our EC are coming from academia, and they're not just coming from schools that you may be really familiar with. They're coming and teaching at places like community colleges. We have a senior lecturer who's actually teaching and working in Australia. We have faculty who are tenured for a long time, fully distinguished professors in their fields at private institutions. We also have people who were just recently tenured, like as quickly as a few weeks ago at a public institution. We have people who are going up for tenure as I speak. And so you see this large range of rank if academia is something that rings true to you. But not everyone here is from academia. Some of these people have never taught, and that's good too, because they represent industry. They represent some of the technologies and the trades that attend and support SIGGRAPH. That's also important. But then there's people in here that are like me that really aren't supposed to be here. Like Brad, our treasurer, works for NASA. And he's one to tell you while you're sitting across from him from dinner or outside of a session that's like, these really aren't my people, but they're my people, right? And so I think that's the beauty thing about SIGGRAPH itself, that you should really never count yourself out because you're not like any one of these people, because very much like Adam, not only could you get onto this group or be a part of this group in less than a year, and then in -4 years, maybe, then you could be chair or leader of this group. So there is no official experience needed. We'll take all of you. Careful what you wish for, but we really are looking for people to bring new and exciting ideas. So as we look at this group, the other thing to take note of is that it is very US centric. Almost all, with the exception of one, of our EC leaders are coming from the United States. A majority of them are coming from the eastern part of the United States, with some on the West Coast, and then two of them are from the central part of the United States. And then Mashuda Glencross is in Australia, right? So she's our outliner there. But you can see something that I hope is blatant, is that we probably need to work harder to get some more international representation, because we are an international conference and organization meeting all over the world at this point. And so that's something that my committee will be working on as we step into the future. Our election is coming up very quickly. You can find more information about that on our website, and you can, if you're a member, and if you're not a member, you can become a member very quickly and still be eligible to vote, but you can help us find the next set of people that will be on this body. So with all that being said, my group, the nominations committee, is actually looking for a new standing committee chair. The standing committees are the committees that sit underneath of the EC, and we take the strategy from the EC and then we act on that, which is really exciting. Guiding light comes down and we run with those ideas, and we have many standing committees representing many different constituencies, many of which are going to meet today, and they're going to tell you about the things that they're looking for. But more specifically, we are looking for a new education committee chair who will start in September. So that recruitment advertisement will be out soon. If you have any questions for me about my experience with SIGGRAPH, I can talk your ear off anytime. But I can also chat with you about maybe you want to be on the EC someday, maybe not now, maybe later, maybe in 6 years, because you have a plan. I often have plans, so I know how that feels. So I'd be happy to talk about what you might need to do to reverse engineer that path. Maybe you just have a little bit of time to give, and I can also help you find a place to stick that time. So thank you very much.
So if we're going to talk about people who don't belong here, I think I'm the winner. My name is not Ginger Alford, and I'm not the Education Committee Chair. However, I am sitting in for, I'm Glenn Goldman. I'm an educator from the New Jersey Institute of Technology, and I have actually been on the Education Committee for about 10 years, and this was my second stint on that committee. And it is a committee primarily of educators. We are mostly colleges and universities, community colleges, but we also have people, and we've had members from K-12 organization, schools, and even museum educators. So, and we are international. We have members from South America, from Europe, and from Asia, and we are looking for 2 to 3 new members. I just found out we were also looking for a chair that I was not aware of. And we're looking at people who are educators in all different fields. We have computer science. I myself am an architect, which also puts me in a very small group. So if we can have the next slide, please. Jenna, the next slide, thank you. We have a lot of different roles, and just as another example of someone who was here with me who just recently got on the Education Committee who's been doing something is John Kays.
Yes, I'm unmuted. Good. Thanks, Glenn. I'd like to give everybody a couple of quick examples of activities I'm currently working on as a volunteer on the Education Committee. I'm engaged in helping SIGGRAPH build outreach to underserved communities who can benefit from what SIGGRAPH has to offer. The idea is that we can make superb computer graphics and interactive techniques educational content available to a broader audience. As we do, SIGGRAPH expands its reach and brand as we help those who may not have access to this kind of amazing material. This also dovetails into the important work that I'm privileged to help with as an Education Committee liaison to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee that you'll hear more about from Tony Bayless. I can't express how grateful I am to work with such committed and capable professionals and educators. And I really look forward to every call as we carry out our volunteer work.
So we have a fair number of different activities. And again, I won't read them, they're listed there, but you have, these all allow you to jump off into other activities. As the representative of the Education Committee, I was a liaison to the SIGGRAPH 2013 in Anaheim. And because we're all educators, made sense. I was courses chair in 2015. So there are a lot of different things that we do both at the conference and throughout the year. We do meet once a month on Zoom, and we have activities that have been going on, 12 months a year and involve international audiences. And there are opportunities for you to be involved just a little or a lot. And again, we're looking for at least 2 to 3 more people. If you are interested, please email the education-chair@siggraph.org and someone will be in touch with you. We're looking for a 3-year commitment, and it is a lot of fun. It allows you to see SIGGRAPH in a whole different way, and you get to meet some extraordinary people who are not in your field but have similar interests. And I cannot be too strong in telling you, SIGGRAPH has been one of the most wonderful things that I've ever done, and I've been to every single one since 1988, so I kind of fell into this like everybody else and can't let go. So please come join us. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Paul Strauss. I'm a director on the executive committee. I also lead a strategy group, which has the very unwieldy name of 21st Century Digital Presence. And our goal with this strategy group is to figure out ways to improve our online services. Our organization has done a pretty, I'll just say, mediocre job of connecting people online, especially in our new world of people using computers more than meeting in person. With me is AJ Christensen, who's the chair of the chapters committee. And the reason the chapters is involved will be obvious when I get to the next slide. Dana, yeah, thanks. So the opportunity here is to connect people online, to inform them, to provide networking opportunities, and to support them. And this is worldwide, year-round, and our entire community, researchers, practitioners, teachers, artists, designers. So a little bit of background on this. Our strategy group, the 21st Century Digital Presence Group, we created plans to use existing platforms in the world to connect people. And the chapters committee independently came up with this new initiative called Global Communities, which is like chapters, but they're online and they're organized around topics instead of location. So people will get together to discuss a particular topic. We've decided on 2 platforms for discussions: Discord for more real-time events and discussions, and Reddit for longer-lived, archived, asynchronous discussions. And we would like to have plans to transition from one platform to the other when it makes sense. So you might have a live event and then transition to Reddit for longer discussions regarding that. Next slide, please. So what has to happen to make this work? There's 3 phases. The planning phase, there's obviously some work involved to figure out how to do administration for all of these platforms, figure out moderation, figure out time zones, all in the context of global communities. And there's also some technical work that needs to be done to figure out the Discord server needs and whether we need to implement any bots or anything like that. Then there's the implementation phase where we set up and test the server, and also after we have the policies for doing those things, develop plans and guidelines for the administrators and the moderators and the transitions between the platforms so that everything's in place. Really what we want to do is avoid chaos where anyone can create a new channel or a new discussion and things get out of hand, and anything online turns into well, what things turn into online. So we want to avoid that. And finally, the ongoing phase is deployment. So there's administration and moderation in perpetuity, and someone has to manage all of this. Next slide, please. So here are the roles that we're looking for. The biggest one, and these roles are going to have different levels of time commitment, obviously. The project manager obviously is going to be a very big role. Skills, they should be familiar with the Discord and Reddit structure and policies already, so they can make informed decisions about that. And what they're going to do is figure out the policies and guidelines and then manage the other phases, the planning and implementation phases. And then once we get into the ongoing use of the platforms, manage the administrators and the moderation teams. The next role is implementers and administrators. And this is more upfront work, just figuring out what we need for the Discord servers, set up and test them, deal with any technical issues that come along. And that's an ongoing role. And the administrators are the only ones who are going to be able to create new channels and manage members. And finally, we're going to need a bunch of moderators for the different channels and threads. And these people will have to be familiar with subject matter in various fields. So there's going to be a lot of room for a diverse array of people. And we always are looking for diversity when we're looking for new volunteers. But in this particular role, we're going to need very specifically geographically and culturally diverse people so that we don't lock into a specific time zone. We want to have worldwide, and we don't want to lock into a specific worldview. So they're going to do things that moderators typically do, maintain order and so forth. That's it. If you have any questions, please either use the Q&A or feel free to contact AJ or me after this. And everyone's doing a little bit of personal stories. I have Glenn beat a little bit. I started coming to SIGGRAPH the conference in 1984, and I've been to every one since, one virtually. And if I had known 20, 30 years earlier that volunteering for SIGGRAPH was so much fun and you get to meet so many great people, I would have done it a lot sooner. So I'm done.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tony Bayless. I am the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee Chair. And I come to you from organization Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory in the Bay Area. I am so privileged to be here today just based on the fact of hearing a lot of the stories that have been told already of what this organization and this particular committee represents, quite frankly. You heard diversity mentioned quite a bit, but you heard it from a perspective, I hope, that moves beyond the notion of just how Western US thinks about diversity a lot of times. And, and sometimes that's from a race perspective. You heard it from the perspective from Paul and communities that we serve. Heard it from John and how he basically wants to reach out to underrepresented talent. You heard it from Rebecca, who really talked about trying to figure out how she fit into a particular organization and how she basically navigated that to the point where she's been part of a wonderful experience for serving an organization that she's grown to love. So I'm in that same boat. I basically been in the organization for nearly, over 30 years, I should say. And we used to work with artists like Rebecca to basically do visualizations. And that's how I came to be. I've served on the EC. I've been a part of this community off and on for a long time. And I've basically was recruited by the organization again to come back and lead this particular effort that's centered in on us creating a diverse, equitable, and inclusive organization for all members and all people who attend our conference, quite frankly. And what we want to try and do is build that inclusive environment as much as possible. I thank John for being on our committee and other of our leadership for engaging in this sort of journey that we're on. Because like you see possibly in your own organizations, we're on that same journey of discovering how we can be a place where people feel welcome, valued, and also an integral part of the community that we basically so love and want to be involved in. So with that said, I would encourage you to definitely engage because without any sort of involvement, it's hard to create a culture that really is fitting for you. So we would need your input, your feedback, your involvement to basically make that happen. So with that, as far as my committee goes, of what we're looking for, what I would say is, we are looking for people who can add information, be a resource to basically help us on our journey to help people belong and bring their whole selves to the organization as a whole and be representative of that to not a community of folks, but possibly to other communities as well, and us integrating all of those things together. Next slide, Jenna. So these were some of the goals that we basically had set out, and you can find this up on the website. I won't read them as well, but what we've done is basically acted on each of these goals as an organization, and we are basically working toward how we can even improve upon them even further. So we need valuable volunteers to help us with that. All right, next slide, Jenna. So with that said, what we're looking for are a couple of different, I'd say committee liaison roles, as well as folks who can represent and be a resource and advisor across the globe, because we are an international community and we want to basically be reflective of that on our committee, as well as basically understand some of the things that we should be paying attention to from a global perspective as well. So the communication liaisons, those are individuals that are going to be working with social media and other things, our website, so forth and so on, so we can help out with that. And then, like Paul had indicated, we have online events and such. We basically work towards starting some online events in the DEI space, and that has basically went out and been global within the organization, which has been grand. So we want to basically contribute to the organization's efforts on from a DEI perspective as well. So I would say contact this website, this email, your address, and then for more information, and we'll get back to you. So with that, I'll stop there, and Jenna, next on the list.
Hi, everyone. My name is Victoria Zaba. I'm the chair of the Digital Arts Community Committee. As with everyone else, I can say you can read the slide to see what our mission is. I have to share a little bit of autobiographical information because in the parade of outsiders, I also feel like an outsider. I have a PhD in Victorian literature, so of course I'm obviously a SIGGRAPH volunteer. I currently work in critical and creative approaches to digital media for the arts and humanities at a university. I started out at SIGGRAPH working on the art gallery as a committee member, helping to set up and pull down things, and gradually got more involved. I chaired something called the Information Aesthetic Showcase in 2009, the art show called XYZN Scale in 2013, and then Art Papers. So I've really been interested in both the practice side of art and in writing about it and critical approaches to it. And next slide, please. Some of the activities that I want to talk to you about are related to the ongoing work of the digital arts community, which I've chaired since 2016. Side note, I will be done with this role in 2022. So if somebody's looking ahead to a substantive chair role that they might be interested in, this might be something to keep your eye on. But within that, we have a number of ongoing projects that we could use help with. The first is the SIGGRAPH History Archives. And this is a project that also crosses over with the History Committee, which I don't think is represented here otherwise. But what this group is doing, and it's led in part by some of our DAC committee members, is taking the history of the SIGGRAPH conferences and exhibitions and making sure that they're available long-term in an archive. They're also doing this work with the Isaiah Art Show Archives, for example. So what we'd like to see is people who want to help with the gathering, curating, vetting, structuring of that information and putting it into archival websites. Some of that would be more people-facing, tracking down folks. Some of it is more about coding or creating visualizations or other types of activities. I wrote in here the time commitment is an ongoing project because it's the kind of thing where maybe you could help a little bit at one time and more at another time. And if you're interested, that's something I can put you in touch with the people who are running that specific project. The Digital Arts Web Assistant is related to some of the ongoing activities we have in our committee. So we have two main things that we do outside of the conference time. One is online art exhibitions, where we take in juried submissions around a theme and then put them onto the web as an online exhibition. Our most recent one was called Digital Power, Feminism, Activism, and Advocacy in Women Online. And we also have started in pandemic area doing these Sparks monthly lightning talks discussion series where we bring, say 8 people together to do lightning talks and then have a follow-on discussion. And that's a monthly event, each of which is co-moderated by somebody on our committee and somebody else. And there's a lot involved with that. Some of it is related to gathering content and materials and programming the event, coordinating and communicating, also creating the websites associated with that. So the web roles here are really both about the online exhibitions and about these monthly events, but it's also about creating an online presence more broadly for us. We have a website we launched recently at dac.siggraph.org. That's just dac.siggraph.org that you can take a look at, that we're expanding outward with some of these materials. And we'd love more ideas and more insights into ways to move forward with that. Next slide, please. And then related to all of this too is us wanting to branch out into other media. We too, like everyone else, want to diversify and expand our audience. We've always been conscious that the mission of the digital arts community is to give a broader swathe of people access and opportunity within the organization, as well as to coordinate with more of what's happening within the rest of the SIGGRAPH community. And so what we'd like to do is expand our social media presence. Some of us olds aren't as great at this as we might be. Like I personally read Twitter, but I have never been on TikTok. So, we're looking for other ways to think about how to expand that audience, and also to think about how we can carry forward some of our commitments to expansion and inclusiveness by sharing the word, even about at the level of applying for things. Like if you don't know that we have an art show, then your work might never get into it, but there might be space for you in that. So helping us to think more strategically about a communications strategy as well. And the other thing that I'd like to say about all of this is that arts at SIGGRAPH is a thread that runs through much more broadly than you might think. Sometimes we tend to think of ourselves as being this little put upon sub community. People don't have money, they don't have resources, we're different than everybody else. Sounds like everybody on this call thinks they're different than everybody else. And of course we are all different, but there is this strong sense of people wanting to reach across the aisle and connect with people who have an art interest, who aren't necessarily artists by training, while at the same time bringing in the expertise of the people who do this for a living as their primary focus, and figuring out how to inject that into some of the conversation in both critical and creative terms as well. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mickey Rose. I'm the Conference Advisory Group Chair, or CAG Chair, as you can see in my little title there for short. I'm here today to represent the SIGGRAPH Conference and the CAG itself, because we have a couple of positions open in all of those things. But just a little bit of background on me, since we're sharing personal stories. I started volunteering with SIGGRAPH through the Student Volunteer Program. And though the SIGGRAPH Student Volunteer Program applications are already closed for this year, I highly recommend students get involved in that program and start that way, because there's a lot of awesome benefits that go along with it, and networking opportunities and all kinds of great stuff. That said, I believe the SIGGRAPH Asia Student Volunteer Program is taking applications right now. So shout out to them. Students, you should probably check them out. But that is how I got involved, and that's another great snowball sort of story, because I started as a student volunteer and then have attended, this will be my 20th SIGGRAPH this coming year. And I've been to every one of them since then, and I love it. And I keep coming back and keep doing more things. And each time I got a little more involved and a little more involved, until now I am leading the group that manages multi-year issues and policy issues and contracts and recruiting of conference chairs and CAG chairs and things like that for the conference overall. So that's what I do. You can all read the slide like everybody else has said about specific things, but I'm happy to answer any questions about the when and why and how of what we do too. Next slide, please. I guess you could have read the slide before I said next slide. Whatever, my timing's off. Specifically, what I wanted to talk to you about today for the conferences, we have this annual cycle of need for volunteers, right? So about this time each year, we're always going to need subcommittee members for the next year's conference and program chairs for the one after that. So right now, our SIGGRAPH 2022 program chairs, those people on the conference committee that are heading up each individual program that you would attend at the conference, are looking for their subcommittee members. So this is a great way to get involved especially if you're not a student anymore, so don't kind of qualify for the student volunteer program, but you're interested in a specific aspect of SIGGRAPH and you want to get involved. This is a really great way to get started, to pick your program that you're most excited about or most interested in, or even one that you just really want to learn a lot more, and volunteer as a subcommittee member. Things that you might do as a subcommittee member might be like outreach, communication via email, working with submitters to get everything submitted that they need. When we're in person, it might be on-site roles such as like leading discussions or moderating panels, things like that. There's all kinds of stuff that our subcommittee members do. So that's a really, really great way to get started and get involved. I see a question that has come up, and it's a good thing to talk about. So I should also mention there is an XSV program too for former student volunteers that can volunteer that way. And they oftentimes get pulled into subcommittees and get some experience that way too. So it's a good one as well. Our SIGGRAPH 2023 conference chair is currently looking for his program chairs. So those are the people that will head up these individual programs. And that one, typically people have volunteered a time or two before they jump into program chair, but that again is not required and doesn't always happen. So if you're very, very interested in, again, a specific part of SIGGRAPH and you want to talk to somebody about getting involved in that sort of a leadership position, we would be happy to speak with you. Please reach out to us. I've got the contact information on this slide. Each individual conference has its own chair alias. So chair S22@SIGGRAPH.org is the one you would go to for subcommittee positions for SIGGRAPH 22, and the 23 one is for program chairs for SIGGRAPH 2023. Next slide. We're also starting to look for our SIGGRAPH 2024 conference chair, and that kind of gives you an idea of how far ahead we start working on some of these things, right? So as the CAG chair, this is one of my my jobs to help recruit for conference chair. And so that's a pretty high level position, right? Maybe isn't something you jump into immediately, but if you've been around for a little bit and you have gotten your feet wet and are really interested in getting more involved, this is a good one for you to consider. Also, if you're interested in maybe conference chairing someday, now is a good time to start talking to us about that too. And we'll answer all your questions, get any kind of information you might need. There's a lot of details we have up online at the link listed under duties there that can tell you more about what that job means and what it requires and the time commitment and things like that. And I'm also available to answer any questions you might need. And finally, the last role I have here to talk to you about today, we are looking for another external representative to the CAG. So on the conference advisory group, sometimes we find ourselves without full coverage in specific areas of interest that we need for SIGGRAPH. So right now, one of those places that we're looking for some help is someone with the business side of industry experience, perhaps someone with experience as an exhibitor at SIGGRAPH and or other conferences. So we're looking for someone with experience there to just sort of help us as we talk through issues and come up with ideas and figure out ways to make SIGGRAPH better for our exhibitors and all of the people that attend and want to develop their interest in other areas. So that is my time. I believe now it is time for Q&A. So I think we're going to open that up and start answering some questions.
All right. Thank you, Mickey. Thank you, everybody. So yes, with any questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A. Also, if you put them in the chat as well, we will get to those, but I'm going to just prioritize Q&A questions first. So the first question we have is from Andrew, and it's, I'm UK based and have been steered off active SIGGRAPH involvement in the past because of the commitment to travel to US for meetings. Now we've all got more used to online meetings. Do Rebecca's comments mean that it's going to be logistically easier to contribute remotely?
Since Rebecca was called out, I will be happy to answer, Andrew. And I think the answer is yes. Now, if I'm being honest, we're not exactly sure what things are going to look like and when they will look like that, to be more ambiguous. But we have proven, I think, over these last several months that we can be very productive without having to meet face-to-face, and based on financial challenges of all kinds of both our attendees, our volunteers, but also our organization, the world. I suspect one of the things we're going to be looking very hard at once we are back to normal is travel. I mean, I think we were very lucky with the amount of travel that we were able to offer for volunteers for our various organizational efforts. My guess is that we're not going to have that many face-to-face meetings, if I'm taking bets. And so, for instance, someone on the EC might not need to attend every meeting in person, although attend remotely, as we're doing right now. And same for conference planning meetings, I would assume. Now, nothing will ever replace face-to-face. I think anyone who's ever been to a SIGGRAPH meeting, either a subcommittee meeting or a jury meeting, my goodness, papers committee meeting, you know that what happens in that room is synergistic, and it can't be replaced. It just can't. The feel of the room will change in a split second and change back again. And that's because of all the energy of the people within those walls. So we will need some of that in order for us to survive. I need some of that for me to survive. So I will fight for some of that. But no, I don't think there's going to be restrictions on if you can't come, you can't participate. I think we're actively seeking people in all kinds of contributions. And so that shouldn't be limited by your ability to travel. Thanks for asking that.
All right, thank you. So we have another question. Are there any requirements for becoming a volunteer? Student status, field of occupation, previous contribution to SIGGRAPH, age, etc.?
Mickey, do you want to take that one?
You can do that. I think you'll find that it's going to vary a little bit across all of the things that we've talked about today, the different positions, but in general, there aren't hard and fast requirements unless it's a skilled position that requires some kind of special training. Most of our positions, almost anybody could jump in and do. Student volunteer specifically, yes, you do have to be a student. I believe for all of our volunteer positions, you do have to be at least 18 years of age, including student volunteers. And that's going to be across all of the programs as well. But yeah, for the most part, it's open to pretty much anybody who is interested. So reach out and jump in.
All right, thank you, Mickey. We have another question. So I was wondering which types of volunteering opportunities are available for PhD students? Adam, do you want to field that one?
Lots of things. We have things, the moderation that Paul was talking about. I mean, I think that's a perfect job for, I would have done that when I was a PhD student for sure. And there's other moderating positions as well.
Adam, can I add into that?
Sure.
So currently there are, I think we have 2 PhD students on our DEI committee, for example. And one is in Australia, but represents a part of the globe for her advocacy in a certain area for young girls and such. And she's in HCI. And then I think we have one in the US as well that also has representation of the things that she basically represents as well from Canada. And we've definitely had PhD students serve in a number of different roles at the organization. And they've been very valuable to us staying in tune with what is in the landscape from an academic perspective, and then also from individuals that are possibly new to the organization or younger in their careers and things of that nature. So those perspectives for us are valuable. So definitely PhD students have a lot of value within the construct of the organization.
If you have lots of time, we're actually looking for somebody to be a student representative on the EC so that we can get, additional perspective. But that's lots of time.
All right, so we have time for about 3 more questions. So I'm going to go to chat. There's one question that's a little specific, so I've asked one of our panelists to address that specifically. But a question is, are subcommittee members required to be eligible as excess fees?
Are subcommittee members required to be eligible as excess fees? No, you don't have to be an excess fee to be a subcommittee member. Many of our subcommittee members are those that have never volunteered before, who have never been part of the student volunteer program. That does not mean that excess fees can't be part of a subcommittee though, because sometimes they do get pulled in as part of that too. So I hope that answered the question.
I didn't know about student volunteers. It wasn't on my radar. I was never a student volunteer. So it's like I didn't get that one badge. It's like I missed out, but I went right into subcommittee work. So that's a really great kind of introductory entry level. If you want to just kind of figure out where your fit is, that's a great place to start.
I'll say that I regret that I wasn't a student volunteer. I did know about it, but I didn't ever do it. And I regret that in hindsight.
Should we mention juries too, or?
Sure.
Did you want to talk about that, Paul?
Well, we don't have much time, but there are juries in various programs. And if you're interested in being on a jury for your particular area, contact the program chair for that program.
You could also contact the chair aliases that we shared earlier and get information about that too.
Okay, thank you. So I know that Glenn from the Education Committee wants to answer this next one live. So what is the time frame for the education volunteer?
Well, it depending on what you mean. If you're talking about when do we need a volunteer, the answer is now or maybe a month ago. But you would probably come online at the conference this summer. In terms of how much time it takes, if that's what the question is, well, there are monthly meetings, but then it depends on what task you're interested in and what you work on. We have members who are liaisons to other committees and even other organizations. So they have time that's given to those organizations. If you're working on something like the faculty submitted student work, that tends to get very heavy from about May until the conference, although there's some preparatory work beforehand. If you're working on social media or outreach, that tends to be more even throughout the year. If you're working, there are all sorts of activities and depends on what you're interested in. So, but we are looking for help now. So if you're interested, come talk to us.
Thanks, Glenn. So we're going to answer one more question. So this one question is anonymous. So some of the roles suggest 5 to 20 hours per week as the time commitment. Does this tend to be roughly evenly spread throughout the year, or are there times where it's higher and other periods where it's lower for that average?
I can take that one. Oh, go ahead, Adam.
No, it depends, right? I mean,
Yeah.
There are roles that it's pretty average, and there are roles where it's very bursty. Rebecca can add.
No, that's a good, bursty is much more positive than what I was going to say. There are some roles that ramp up to a pretty serious clip before the actual thing happens, whether that be a specialized conference or one of the bigger conferences or an event or a webinar. So we like to say they average out throughout the year, but it could be that you have some pretty heavy lifting weeks. But as you get involved in these things, chairs and program chairs and other volunteers will kind of give you the lay of the land as you would enter. Our goal is to never surprise you with that kind of thing. And we all know you have families, lives, pets, succulents, all kinds of things you need to take care of. And so we want to make sure that you're keeping a nice balance with your volunteerism.
I can say as being the chair, it's been pretty even with chaos showing up almost every day. But I'm glad I'm doing it.
All right, thank you. That is all the time we have for questions today. But if you have any more, please feel free to reach out to project manager at SIGGRAPH.org on this slide here. We will also be sending out these slides in a PDF, and the recording will be available via the website. So you will get a follow-up email if you've attended today. And now I'm just going to hand it over to Adam to wrap it up.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming and attending, and thanks all to the panelists. You guys did an amazing job. It was a really, a spectacular event as far as I'm concerned. Exemplary for future generations. But I guess at this point, Tuffy can say goodbye, and we can all say goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. We hope to see you around.
Yes,
Bye, thank you.
Please do volunteer for SIGGRAPH. We really can use your help. No matter what help you have to offer, we can use it.
You bet. Thank you all.